to do with you, okay? And they've got something they want you to do on the mainland, so we'll be moving. I said, moving? Just like that? And he said, yeah. So I went on to my secret group with the one that Janet was in, Spiritual World Network and Psychic, and told them, well, I'm moving. So it was a real sad thing. So I went to the mainland with him, and we drove cross country. And we had to wait in California for our Cadillac. We were uppity-up kind of people. You know, I was living in and out of mansions, and it's a long story. But it was a real level of different levels I lived in then, different areas of being different people working for the government. But my husband, at the time, we got divorced. That's a long story. I won't go into that. But in the process, the Men in Black came, and I was looking for a job because I was getting divorced from this man, and he was high up with the Phillips family in Oklahoma, and I had to go do some work. I needed money. And so the Men in Black went to these different places to get a job, and they visited a lady at a desk and said, tell her when she comes in here, we know she's coming in for an interview, that she's not going to get hired, and that we came by and told her that we have something for her to do and stop looking for a job. She's not going to get a job with you. And this lady repeated this stuff to me, and she was real weird about it. She was a young, like a woman that worked for it was a big corporation I was going to go work for. But she was you could tell she was she was being made to deliver this message to me. But so it was another thing where they visit the man, my husband, and then we get divorced. They visit the woman, and she's scared to death, and so she delivers the Men in Black's message. Then, lo and behold, I go and I start driving a truck, and I remember back in Fort Hood before that I had gone to see my daughter, and they were people in the with 3 Corps, they were trying to get me to drive a truck. Turns out, make a long story short, Janet, that Tom was driving a truck coast to coast, and they couldn't keep up with him because he was pulling for Johnson & Johnson. He met the owner, Johnson & Johnson. They wanted their stuff from New York, New Jersey to California. All right, well, we'll have to wait for the next chapter.
And that's the end of your turn. Right, okay.
I don't think you've heard that, but it's a long story, but I'm really just hitting the highlights.
Long story.
Okay, I'm on mute.
We'll come back to it. Okay.
I'll pick up a little bit on
Karen.
what you said, TJ. It blends with what I'm going to say. And I just looked at some notes here. I forgot about this. So speaking of Robert he did his duty at Fort Hood. And so anyway, but back to what I was talking about with the Roswell, we did also go to Area 51. And I have some pictures, and I'm not sure if I told this before. I don't think so. But we started out from Las Vegas 3 hours prior to arriving in Rachel, Nevada. And we didn't really realize it would take that long. But I was determined to get there. And so we started, I may have told this before, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it again. We started, and he said, are you sure you want to do it? It's getting late. And I said, well, it's 3. And he said, well, it'll be 6 or 7 by the time we get there, and it'll probably be dark. And I said, well, we really have to do it. He said, okay, I'm with you. I agree. And so we took off, and we saw the beautiful, beautiful hills. There were no cars, rarely any cars at that time. And so we arrived at this place and had a hamburger called the Little Alien. And it's really cute. It's a little trailer house that they've turned into a burger place. And you go in, and they have 3 or 4 people working, and they have the ET souvenirs and T-shirts and caps and that sort of thing. So we sat down and had a hamburger. And he said, do you know how? He said, how? I said, how are we going to get to the Area 51? And he was looking up on his map, and he said, he called over this lady, and he said, could you tell us how we can get to Area 51? And she said, well, it's a gravel road by the side here. and you have to go very slow, not to exceed 25 miles an hour, because some animals will be crossing, possibly. And then there will be a car. If you see a car that has tinted black windows, don't worry about it, because it could be any color car, but, don't worry, it's nothing. And so he wrote everything down, and I wanted to look at the T-shirts, and so he paid and went out to the car. And I didn't know he paid because I was over looking at the T-shirts and getting some for some friends and so forth. And I asked this one, I said, well, which one do you think I should get? And I thought, she doesn't seem totally human. And I thought, she picked out, they were really the good ones, the one that I could feel that I should get them. So I paid him, and she said, okay, well, your husband, or he just paid for the meal. And I said, well, I'm going to pay for these. And I said, did he get the instructions on how to get to the 51? She said, yeah, it's the gravel road right to the side here. It's just like Bergstrom. And I said, what? She said, you heard me. And I went, oh, gosh. Well, I didn't say any more. I knew not to say a thing. And I got out to the car. Well, Robert worked at Bergstrom Air Force Base when he got out of A&M, and when he was back and forth from Fort Hood to Bergstrom and then to Ellington Air Force Base in Houston. And so I got the T-shirts. I said, you're not going to believe what happened in there. And he said, what? I said, well, I was asking her if you really had the right way to get out there. This was dark, and, make sure. And he said, yeah. She said she gave them to. I said, well, she said it's just like Bergstrom. He said, what? I said, that's what she said. That's what she said. And I said, what do you think? I said, probably they checked us out at this time so late going down there. They got our license plate and checked us out. I said, do you think it's the government or do you think it's an ET? He said, I think it's an ET. He said, I never thought those people were totally seeming like humans to me while I was in there. He said, didn't you notice how they operated? I said, yeah, I sure did. And so that's my story to add up to that. And we got down there, and it was really something. And at that time, Robert had COPD, but he could walk around. And I told him I wanted to get out of the car. And he said, okay, that's it for me. I'll pick this up later. I'll pass this to you.
Yep.
Janet.
Okay. Okay, hold on, let me get this set. Okay, over to me. I've heard that story before, but it's very fascinating because, TJ was talking about encountering the Men in Black. So you went to a store, and it's the alien, and people in the UFO field are very familiar with the alien.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed to be, and you were there at what time in the morning?
We were there at, it was like, by the time we left the hamburger place, it was about 10 o'clock. And he said, "Do you sure you want to go down this road?" I said, "Oh, most definitely." Do you? And he
so it was
said,
like
"Yeah."
10 p.m. You're saying 10 p.m.
Yeah, it was like about 10. It was 7 when we got there. We kind of looked around at all the places while it was, and then it gradually became dark. And then by the time we got out of the little burger place, it was really late, 9:30, 10 o'clock, because we hung out in there for a while.
Okay, so they were still open at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they were the ones giving you directions.
They were closing. Yeah, they were closing. They'd already given him direction. Yeah, and then we left to go down there.
And so we'll pick that up, what you saw there.
What happened?
I'm not sure where I want to go. Well, you sent me a video, and it looked like something was dancing around or something.
Yeah, Derek sent that to you. Because what happened is I took pictures. I had a camera and I had an iPhone. And so I would take pictures of it out there. I got as close to the red line as I could. And then I took pictures from my camera, and then I'd go back to the car where Robert was, and I'd leave the camera and I'd go back with the iPhone and do it. And so Derek, because he was in the military for years. I mean, he took care of 20 troops in Afghanistan. I mean, he's brilliant, and that's the one Robert picked for me to help me. And but Derek said, these are in motion. He said, I'm going to send these to Janet, but he said, and be careful, really, who you let see these. And I said, really?
Oh, okay.
So that's FYI and what he said. If you have any questions, you're more than happy to call him. So,
okay,
and
I will call him.
I can finish the last part when we go back around again and tell you what happened out there.
So,
and that was some of the
I do want to go. That was right. So TJ has been to Area 51. From past interviews, she was sharing about Roswell, but I've never been to either. My experiences with the military were at Johnston Atoll, which is another whole story. But all these things are connected by this. It's not a railway. It's a rapid transit system which operates on some kind of vacuum, you can literally get in this rail type system, which isn't a rail, and go from the West Coast to the East Coast in 1 hour. It's like so
right.
You're just there. And so even though you may be in one underground installation, it's nothing to work across the country and then come back and go back to your house. That's what we talked about. Montauk, that's what happened to some of the people that worked at Montauk, like Stuart Swerdlow. So I want to go into that because my focus
and that's how we were connected, too. I just had to say that.
One.
We were connected with that one.
Yeah. Right. So we're connecting the dots.
We sure are.
And correlating our stories. And so TJ and I have been dancing around each other for years, since 1993. And TJ's going to be up in like 30 seconds here. But Karen and even Paula and all of us in the UFO field, we're here for a reason. And I think if we ever got our stories together and put aside any kind of differences or whatever and just talk straight with each other, I think
it's interesting because I owe Paula so much. She's done so much for me, and that's how you and I met physically. You and Sasha and I met, Paula.
Right. So we're going to pass this to TJ. We're going to keep this going. Okay. TJ, your turn. Take it away.
Okay, the UFO secret space and the women that are doing the alienology and phenomenology and ufology, including with parapsychologists, intuitive precognitionists, and ET experiencers. That should be quite a Cosmos Divine Expo that I'd like to do or be a part of. Now, one thing that I found odd coming cross country with my husband, he had certain things he had to do. Now, folks, I'd like to get this in a linear timeline, but there's so many timelines that I was a part of that it jumps all over the place. So it's been very hard for me to do one biography. So this is why it's important to do these radio shows, although I feel like I'm giving away intellectual property, which is my soul, but at the same time, what are we if we're not our memories? And that was part of why I had to go by and see Dolores Cannon. Now, apparently, the Men in Black or the extraterrestrials or both, because we didn't know they were CIA, Mormon, Men in Black. It always seemed to be the ones you met were part of the trusted, like the FBI agents. And I have the utmost respect for any intelligence agencies because I know how hard it was to get people we could trust with morals. It's all about moral responsibility to the humanoid race, all the colors, all the religions, whatever you want to call it, culture that separates humanoids on the planet. And I felt like I was part of I was observing this, having died, but I thought it was odd that my husband, I didn't know who Dolores Cannon was. For those of y'all that don't know, she's not like me. She's not a precognitionist or a psychic medium. She was, and she made sure I knew that. She said she was a hypnotherapist. So we had a talk in her office, and she said, "Oh, I hate that you got here late. My husband